Guys, what is going on? Okay, I hope y'all are doing well. This is a different format of a video, okay? Because today I'm describing to you guys what it means to be intense within a workout. So there's a lot of misconceptions I feel with this, and I feel like this is the number one thing that is going to drive your progress when you're trying to achieve your goals. Intensity is criminally underrated. I've worked out with a lot of people, and the one thing I think everyone misses is intensity. Okay, so we're going to be talking about what intensity is. We're going to talk about how to achieve intensity and, all this shit. So let's get out of the way and talk about intensity. It's an objective truth when it comes to exercise. And according to www.betterhealth.vic.gov, I hate having to cite sources, but there's nerds watching this video. I know there's nerds watching this video, nerds and virgins in the comments. Show your love, right? And they're going to want a source, okay? And this is from a government trusted site, even though we all secretly know what intensity is deep down. It's just a lot of people forget how to be intense because they don't know how to go hard. So this is what intensity is. This is all intensity is. How hard your body works during exercise. Okay, it's not a difficult thing. But a lot of people get this confused because they see people screaming, they see people yelling, they see people getting angry, and they think, wow, that guy's being really intense. Just by screaming, I guess maybe it's making his body work a little bit harder by screaming your lungs out. But in reality, that is more emotional. It's more aggression. There's no objective truth to what it is, right? It's more like aggression. It's more emotional, right? It can't be measured. Intensity can be measured. It can be measured in things like heart rate, RPE, which is rate of perceived exertion. Okay. It could be measured in cortisol levels, although you don't want high cortisol. If you have high cortisol, you're going to have Cushing's disease, okay? But these are ways to measure intensity. Obviously, the best way, I believe, you don't need a fucking heart rate monitor. If you're interested, I guess you can put it on. You don't need to go to the doctor and say, I need my cortisol levels taken. If you do, you have serious problems. Like, you actually have to fucking find medical attention. The best way to determine the objective of intensity, like the objective truth of intensity, is rate of perceived exertion. So with this being said, right, there is objective ways to measure intensity, but intensity in comparison from one person to another is subjective. Okay, so I had this discussion with a friend, right? We had a debate. He was basically saying that me benching, let's say if I can bench 225, and Eddie Hall benching 315, let's say, because that's probably light for him, right? 225 is heavy for me. 315 is heavier than what I'm doing, but it's light for Eddie Hall, I'd assume, because he was trying to get like a 700-pound bench. His argument was Eddie Hall would be training with more intensity if we just did this. Let's say I went to the gym, I did 225 for one rep. Eddie Hall went to the gym, did 315 for one rep. He was saying Eddie Hall is working harder than me because he's lifting more weight. But if this is what the definition of intensity is, how hard your body works, if Eddie Hall did this one time in a workout, right, but he can also do it 20 more times, so he could do 21 reps of 315, but me, this is my max, I actually am working more intense in that moment than Eddie Hall. Now, a lot of you are going to get emotional and say, I think I work harder than Eddie Hall. That is not what I'm saying. I strive to work as hard as Eddie Hall, but we all know Eddie Hall, when he works out, he goes hard, okay? He lifts heavy for himself, right? But in this example, I am achieving higher intensity than Eddie Hall because Eddie Hall does not have to work nearly as hard to bench 315 that I have to do, to bench 225, okay? I hope we can agree on this because I think it makes logical sense. If he can produce a result 20 times and use more weight than me, and I can produce a result once, if he produces 315 one time, and I produce 225 once, I would think I am working harder because my body has to work harder. My heart rate's probably going to go higher than Eddie Hall's, who can do 315 20 times, but he just decides to do it once for the sake of this example. Okay, I freaking hope that makes sense. All right. If it doesn't, then I don't know what to tell you. Go ahead and just dislike the video at that point. Okay, now, so we determined what intensity is. We have ways to measure it, okay? We have our example here of why intensity is a subjective thing when compared from person to person. It's objective when you measure it to yourself, because for me, benching 225 for one is more intense than me benching 185 for one. I know that objectively because 225 is my max and 185 I can rep. It's not that hard to understand. But again, I had a seriously heated debate with my friend about this. It was very heated, okay? Now, let's just get this out of the way. I touched on it very quickly here. What intensity is not? Okay? Intensity is not a pump. It's not screaming. It's not being angry. It's not crying. It's not smelling salts. Okay, this is not intensity. I mean, I guess maybe these things could put more stress on your body, but this is not going to help you achieve it. Well, actually, it could help you achieve intensity. It's going to help you make your body work harder, but this is not intensity. This examples of aggression. Okay? Now, I'm not saying don't scream, don't be angry if that works for you. Personally, I'm never angry when I lift, okay? I'm just saying that this here, aggression, can drive intensity, but that doesn't mean that they're the same thing. Okay, I want to get that clear, because you'll ask like a granddad at the gym. You'll say, "Granddad, how do I be more intense?" Okay, and he's going to say, "Oh, just scream before you lift, or, like take a smelling salt." That's not going to help you be more intense. Again, it could help you be more intense, but in reality, we're going to talk about actual methods to be more intense. And to talk about actual methods to be more intense, we have to talk about what intensity is composed of. So, I said goals are very important when trying to achieve intensity in exercise. For instance, if your goal is to run a marathon, the way you're going to achieve intensity here, let's do this graph too. Let me draw this graph really quickly, and then I'll go back to what I was saying. So on one side here, we have sprints or heavy weights. This is where your 1 rep max deadlift is. This is where your max 100 meter dash sprint is. Over here, we have a marathon. Okay. All right, think of your marathon, 100 rep push-ups, stuff like high volume stuff over here. And we have high output, short bursts here. We have short bursts, more anaerobic, less oxidative path. And then over here we have more oxygen, more aerobic exercises, okay? It all is based around your goals if you want to achieve intensity. Because if your goal is to get a 1 rep max deadlift, and then you say, okay, I'm going to do 100 deadlifts a day with 135 in order to get a 400-pound deadlift, that probably isn't going to work. Same thing with a marathon guy. A marathon guy isn't going to say, I'm going to do 10 50-meter sprints in order to improve my marathon, right? Of course, you can use different methods of both. I'm not saying in order to get a 1 rep max deadlift, you have to stay only over here, because there is where hypertrophy and let's say this guy over here, he doesn't, in a marathon, right? Or for instance, when I did track and field, right? For when we were in cross country season, right? The max distance you run in a race is 3.1 meters, but we went all over the spectrum. There were some days, most practices were above 3 miles. So 4 mile, 5 mile tempo runs at a fast pace, right? But then there was other workouts where we dropped below that 5K competition standard of what we're competing for, right? And we would do 600 meter sprints, which is more anaerobic than aerobic, right? So I'm not saying you have to stay on one side of the spectrum. What I'm trying to say is your goals matter a lot when it comes to achieving intensity and driving and getting better at whatever you're trying to get at. So for the sake of that, and why I think goals are so important, I picked a super generic goal for the video. Okay, the goal in this video is what most people say when they go to the gym. Big, strong. They want to get big, but they also want to get strong. They don't want to get extremely big, but they also don't want to sacrifice putting on muscle in order to only focus on strength, right? Because in reality, if you want to get extremely strong, a lot of people who get strong, you do need muscle to get strong, but you focus less on building muscle. You focus a lot more on getting strong, and when you get big, you focus a lot more on putting on muscle than getting strong. But in reality, the two feed one another, because so the more muscle you have, I can't spell. More muscle equals more tissue to contract, okay? And the more strength you have equals more mechanical tension, more motor unit recruitment. Okay, so again, this is why this is a good goal, because being big and being strong, they really do feed into one another. It just matters about what you care about more, and whatever you care about more is going to be either having you more on this side. So let's say the sole equality of this, the yin and yang, the equal amount of being big and strong is probably right about here on this spectrum, right? Because if you go all the way over here, you don't get very big and you don't get very strong. So it's probably closer to being anaerobic, right? It's not completely anaerobic. So that means that, let's say you have, with this goal, with the yin and yang being here, right? The yin and the yang, okay? The perfect balance of size and strength. Some people, after you cross this threshold here, the midway point, that's the bad midway point, you start to favor more about like volume and stuff like that, which is not in correlation with this goal. This would be, I want to get really good at CrossFit and do really high rep stuff, or I want to get really good at doing 100 push-ups or high rep calisthenics, shit like that, okay? So your goals are to get big and strong. This is the perfect synergy of getting big and strong. So you have all of this here within this goal spectrum to work with. So if you care more about strength, you're going to be doing a lot more strength-oriented stuff. If you care more about being big, you're going to creep over more to hypertrophy stuff. I hope that makes sense. And so this is my graph that I have the difference between high volume, high exertion in a short period of time. Okay, anaerobic, aerobic. All right, I hope that makes sense. Now, we have a goal presented. So now let's talk about the components of intensity. Because for this goal, right, you're going to have your volume, meaning the sets and reps. You're going to have the weight being used, and you're going to have the effort, right? So these all feed into one another. The more volume you use, the more volume you have in your program, the more effort you're going to have to use. All right, so now that we got our three, I accidentally deleted it. So we got our three components of intensity: the weight, volume, and effort. Okay, now that we have the formula to achieve intensity, you need these three things to achieve intensity, right? You can manipulate one, you can crank one up more than the other, right? You can still achieve intensity. They don't all have to be the same, is what I'm saying. But let's talk about why high reps don't work, okay? Because a lot of people, they're like, I want to get big, I'll do 5 sets of 20 on the bicep curl. Why don't high reps work? High rep bad, meaning I would say, all right, I don't know why I think I keep hitting a button, and that's why it is ending the recording. But I want to talk about why high reps are bad. So when I'm talking high reps, 12 to 20 reps, you don't go below this in your training, right? What this does is, for instance, if it's an isolation, you're just going to get a pump. And a pump is not an indicator of actually growing muscle or getting stronger. It's just a bunch of blood getting into the tissue, right? Okay. Now, why are low reps only bad? Low rep 1. Okay, I found out which one it is. Okay. Low reps 1 to 5 reps. Whoa, what the fuck is going on, dude? OBS. I should have. I'm so bad. Okay. Low reps 1 to 5. Let's say you don't go over this in your exercise, right? What's going to happen to you if you stay at low reps is you're not going to have enough time under tension in order to facilitate muscle growth. So when you're up here, the weight's too low, right? And when you're down here, only the weight is too high to get that ability to grow size and strength, right? So if you want to grow size and strength, you want to stay anywhere in your training from 1 to 20 reps. And this all depends on your exercise selection, okay? For instance, a deadlift. Deads, okay? Deads. I'm writing now because when I type, it ends the recording and it's really frustrating. Deads. Deadlifts are better with lower reps. Why? Well, because more muscles are being recruited. More muscles. You have your glutes, you have your back, you have practically every single muscle in the body, your forearms, your quads driving through the ground, your erectors, your glutes, your hamstrings. Everything is working aside from maybe the chest, but even then it's tense. Your abs are tight. Every muscle is working. So by nature, you don't need as much volume because you can nuke every single muscle at once, right? But that doesn't mean, oh, I just did my deadlifts. Well, I don't need to do anything else. No, there's a reason why for this goal in particular, to look big, have low fat, good definition, big and strong, I said 1 to 20, right? Because let's say, why do you do hamstring curls after your deadlifts? Why don't you do it before? Well, hamstring curls only use the hamstrings and deadlifts use everything else. So what's your max hamstring curl? I hope none of you have tested it because who the fuck cares what your max hamstring curl is? It doesn't really facilitate muscle growth. The point of doing your heavy compound movements with lower reps first is to fatigue your musculature to the point where something like a hamstring curl can deliver a stimulus to those muscles. It's the same thing with a chin-up, right? Let's say you're doing chin-ups. You do 5 sets of 5 weighted chin-ups, right? You're doing that to tire your back and biceps out. So then when you do go over to the dumbbells and you start doing your curls, instead of it being, let's say, a 20%, now it's at 60%, right? If that makes sense. So beforehand, the 30-pound dumbbells would be about 20% effort. But since you, and by the way, that'd be really strong if you were doing 30 pounds and it was only 20% effort. But just for the sake of this example, you do chin-ups before, and now you go over to the dumbbells, and now it's at 80%. So now you can be more efficient, and let's say you can do bicep curls and reach failure in 8 to 12 repetitions, okay? Do you guys see what I'm saying? This is why you don't want to bias high reps and say, I'm one of those people that only does 12 to 20 reps, and you don't want to say, I'm one of those people that only does 1 to 5 reps. If your goal is this, okay, I must preface if your goal is this, because some idiot is going to watch the video and say, well, I'm a power lifter and I only focus on 1 to 5 reps. Yes, of course you, Nimrod, because you're tested on your 1 rep maxes. That is what you are preparing for. That is your goal. Of course you would stay at lower reps. But then again, even then, you probably still do some high rep work because, you do accessories and stuff like that. But that is why I said use this rep range. And really, you don't even have to max out. Again, it all depends on what you care about more. If you, let's say you care a lot more about strength than size, right? Okay, well now the rep range changes maybe 1 to 12, right? Let's say you only care about size and you don't really care about strength. Okay, maybe now your rep range is about 4 to 20. Okay, do you see what I'm saying here? But for this goal, the overall general goal, look big, look good, look sexy, be strong, be able to carry your girlfriend, you want to stay within the 1 to 20 rep range, okay? And then again, if you care more about strength, go to this side. If you care more about size, go to this side, okay? I hope that makes sense. All right, so coming back up here, again, people are going to say, oh, I just need more muscle. Oh, I just need more strength. No, dude, you need both, okay? Never, ever only focus on one because they drive each other. Strength drives size, and size drives strength. It's just as simple as that. Why do power lifters have hypertrophy blocks? Because it drives strength. Why do bodybuilders do... actually, bodybuilders inject steroids. So why do natural bodybuilders do deadlift triples at the beginning of their workout? Well, because it's the concept that we talked about here. The deadlifts fatigue all the muscles, so then you can do the hamstring curls and actually get an adequate stimulus out of the muscle. Okay, so with that being said here, let's also talk about another reason why. Actually, I'm going to skip over that because I don't really know how it's going to help into the argument. Basically, I was going to talk about when you do stay in like another reason to structure your exercises like this, like heavy squats. So like first thing you do, squat 5 by 5, right? You do squat 5 by 5. Another reason you do squat 5 by 5 and then you do RDL 3 by 6 to 8. Okay, and then you start doing quad extent, right? So it goes from most muscles used, a little bit lesser muscles used, but still a lot of muscles used, less muscles used, isolation, right? So you're going from the biggest compound movement, the most intense, the most muscles being used at one time, the heaviest weight, and then you're slowly going down to a little bit of a lighter weight, and then a little bit of a lighter weight, so on and so forth, till you're at the end of your workout. Okay, and the reason why I structure it like this is there's a lot of evidence that supports the fact that heavier lifting increases things like IGF-1, testosterone, all of these things that are great. And a lot of people say, oh, well, Tom Platz's workout, he used to do squats 10 by 10. So if you do squats 10 by 10 and you're a new lifter, chances are you're going to get some really endurance legs, but they're not going to be very big. Why? Well, Tom Platz, I'm not disrespecting the guy. He worked very hard, but he is open about his steroid use. What happens when you have steroid use? You don't need to do heavy strain, very straining exercise, heavy output, high motor unit recruitment to increase these hormones, right? Because people have said sprints increase these hormones, heavy squats, heavy deadlifts, sled pulling, stuff like that. High output, high intensity exercise creates these hormones, right? But when you're someone like a bodybuilder and you're doing your 10 by 10, right? That's great and all, but when you're injecting hormones, you don't have to worry about the endocrine adaptation because naturally this stuff is fucking going like this, right? So you don't have to worry about, oh, I need to do something that's going to stimulate my endocrine system because you can literally change your physiology by lifting heavy. This is a completely different subject for another day, but there is evidence that supports the fact that lifting heavy increases hormones. But again, you can go into the gym and do 5 sets of 20 and get super big when you're injecting testosterone, masteron, whatever you want to talk about, right? Because just by the nature of the hormones, right? Okay, so all of this being said, it was so schizo. I went off topic so many times. Basically, guys, the definition of insanity. I did it again. I keep saying the definition of insanity. I am going insane. The definition of intensity is how hard your body works during exercise. This is not intensity. This is aggression. Okay? These are ways to measure your intensity. These don't really matter. These are more for if you're curious or if you really want to, if you're very unsure about yourself working intense. This is probably the best indicator of intensity. Your RPE. How hard was that? Right? This is why intensity is subjective from person to person. It's objective when it comes to the individual, but when comparing two individuals to one another, it's subjective because Eddie Hall can bench 315 20 times, but he only does it once. I can bench 225 once, and I can't go any longer. I achieved a higher degree of intensity than Eddie Hall. I'm not saying I work harder than Eddie Hall for the fanboys. I'm simply saying in this example, this made-up example that never has happened, I would be being more intense than Eddie Hall because Eddie Hall can do this 20 more times. I can only do this once. Whose body is working harder? Mine at that point. Eddie Hall is having a field day with 315, whilst I would get crushed under it. Okay, the spectrum, right? We have more anaerobic sprints, heavy weights, heavy deadlifts. We have over here David Goggins type shit, all right? Now, we have the 3 components of intensity, the force production, the anaerobic component, the volume, the aerobic component, and the effort, which is your intent, which also feeds into the aggression, blah, blah, blah. Okay, here is the 3 components of intensity based off our goal, which is the average power builder type goal. Look big, look good, be strong, stuff like that. The relationship between more muscle and more strength, and that you need both. You don't want to fucking completely neglect one or the other. That's why this rep range is prescribed by me. Okay? And again, I'm not a doctor. No doctor. Okay? No doc. Okay. Why high reps only is bad? because again, it just gives you a pump and it doesn't really do much, right? You can't pick heavy weights when you're doing 12 reps as your minimum. You can't get that much mechanical tension. Why low reps are bad, only with using 1 to 5? Well, they will build some muscle. The minimalist strength approach will build you some muscle, because if you're doing 5 by 5, that's going to build muscle. But are you going to build as much muscle as if you started doing isolations and worked more into the higher rep ranges? No. So in order to get big and strong, you actually need this rep range, 1 to 20. And we discussed that you stay more on the one side at the beginning of your workout. Let's say you're doing deadlifts 4 by 3, and then you do something a little bit less intense, a goblet squat, 3 sets of 8, right? And then you do your leg extensions, and then your calf raises. You start with the biggest muscles and the lowest rep range and the most fatiguing movements to make as many muscles as you can work and get stressed out. And then as you fatigue those muscles, then isolation exercises become more effective because the bigger muscles have been taxed by bigger movements. Now, and then I talked quickly about how hormones are increased by heavy lifting and intense or high output, more sprint-like movements, right? Which is why we want to stay more over here if this is our goal. Okay. So, and then we talked about bodybuilding and how enhanced bodybuilders kind of ruin people's perception when it comes to intensity, because they think that a 10 by 10 is going to make their legs bigger, when in reality it's just going to make them have high endurance. Okay. But it's a fun challenge. There's nothing wrong with challenging yourself. Now, let's go to the chief problem. Okay. The biggest problem is people not being intense. No intensity. Why no intensity? It makes me sad, because everyone wants to get jacked and stacked, right? It makes me sad, right? Because everyone wants to achieve their goals, right? But when you're not being intense, when you're not pushing weight reps and you don't have any intention behind what you're doing, right? You're never going to achieve your goals, unfortunately. So let's see some examples of what low intensity might look like, or what you can infer, right? The ability to talk during a set normally. Talking during a set, okay? That goes into the effort, the intent, and probably the weight and volume, because chances are if you're talking normally during a set, you're probably not using very much weight. You're probably not doing, you're probably not doing enough reps or something like that, right? So, again, social overtraining. This is one that I hate, dude. Honestly, I'm so fucking antisocial at the gym, dude, because I really care about actually lifting. I don't give a shit about talking. I love talking, but I like talking when I'm not lifting, okay? And again, there's nothing wrong with, like, if you don't give a shit about intensity and you just want to go to the gym to hang out, I guess that's fine. But I'm targeting people that actually want to, like, see improvement, right? Like you want to focus solely on improvement. You want to make the most of your time at the gym. Okay, being able to speak clearly, not being focused, right? We kind of said that. Not pushing weight, staying at the same weight forever, not pushing reps. All right. So yeah, these are examples of indications of that you might not being intense. You might not being intense. Okay, so let's talk about some solutions, because I want to give you guys solutions, right? I don't want to just give you this whole meaningless presentation. This was just laying the foundation of what intensity is, why we structure our workouts in certain ways, blah, 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 right? But this, everyone knows this pretty much. Like, you know to do your squats before your quad extensions in order to achieve your goal, right? To get bigger and get stronger, right? We know how to structure a workout. I just had to lay this all out. This is the real core of the video. This is the problem, low intensity, right? And these are some examples of low intensity. And believe it or not, it's very common, okay? So if you're tanking the weights, if you're picking weights that allow you to talk during a set, if you're not going to that extra rep when you know you have a couple reps left in you, when you're doing RIR of 5 reps in reserve on working set of bench, you know you're not pushing the intensity. Okay, so these are all examples of it. What are the solutions? Well, I'm happy you asked, because I have them right here. Actually, talk about some solutions. I actually wrote some down. Okay, so make lifting more anaerobic. More anaerobic. Okay, anaerobic. No oxygen. Okay, you shouldn't be able to talk during it. It shouldn't be like a run where you're talking. Okay, for instance, we would have days in cross country of low intensity, right? Low intensity was easy runs. I could talk during those runs, right? And they were the same distance as, say, a tempo run, right? Some tempo runs were 5 miles. Some easy runs were also 5 miles. But during the tempo runs, you're giving yourself more output, so you can't talk as much, right? In weightlifting, when it comes to lifting, we talked about how these hormones, IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor, and testosterone, are increased by lifting heavier, meaning more anaerobic, staying on the lower rep range. So you're beginning this whole spiel about structuring workouts is actually extremely important when making your workouts more anaerobic, right? Because the benefits of anaerobic muscle or anaerobic exercise are the hormone adaptations, okay? By nature of them being shorter bursts, you're able to, again, push the weight, and the reps aren't usually high enough there to, like in the first couple exercises, right? Like when you're doing a 5x5, that's not super high reps. Or when you're doing, okay, so anaerobic, right? What was I saying? I got interrupted. Oh my God. But yeah, okay, so basically what I'm trying to say is structure your training to be more anaerobic at the beginning, and then after you've done those short bursts of energy, you can then move to your isolations and target those muscles and get pumped up, right? If you really want to, because just by nature of you taxing your whole body, right? For instance, your chest, you smashed it with a bench press of, a 4x6 or something like 4x6 to 10. And now you're going over to chest flies. The chest flies are going to be more effective because you use that short burst energy and you fatigued your muscles to the point where the isolations are effective, if that's making sense. So yeah, you don't have to be solely anaerobic. No one does bicep curls like, but for instance, on the bench press, it should look like control, explode, control, explode, control. You're really trying to push as hard as you can. So that's the first methodology. And this, just by simply moving anaerobically in your beginning before your isolations, it's going to eliminate the ability to talk during a set. Because you heard, if you're truly being anaerobic, the only noise that you should be making is breathing in before before you squat, breathe in, go down, exhale on the way up, so on and so forth. You're not going to be talking really, right? And it's also going to pretty much, if you're going to high reps, it's going to make sure that your reps are in a relatively reasonable rep range, because you can't be anaerobic for very long. But just a disclaimer, don't be anaerobic the entire workout unless that's your goal. If you're trying to build muscle, you are going to have to eventually, move over to higher rep ranges where you are going to be breathing more normally and stuff like that. So number 2, it's going to be, you need some method to track progression. Okay. Personally, for me, I have a book. You don't have to have a book. You don't have to bring your book to the gym. It can be filming yourself while training. That's why you don't want to hate on everyone who films themselves during training. They're not all like me trying to post for their YouTube channel and be stupid, right? Some of them are just trying to track their progress. You can use your phone. But what this does is it gets rid of the ability to not push weight and not push reps, because a lot of people can get comfortable with a weight and forget what weight they use. So they pick a weight that they have used numerous times before, and then that you get into the trap of not moving up in weight, not moving up in reps. Tracking your progress allows you to see, this is the weight I used, I need to increase it by this much, or this is the weight I used, I didn't get the target, I was on the lower echelon of the 6 to 10 rep range. Most of my first 2 sets were 7, and then I hit 6 on my last set. So now, since it's 6 to 10, I want to be more on the side of the 10 rep range, right? So if you track progress, you can increase the weight and the reps, if that makes sense. And it's just so important, dude. Like, please track progress if you can. Don't just wing it every time at the gym unless you're not serious about it. If you can track progress, do it. Instead of getting on your phone and looking at Instagram in between each sets, get on your phone and put down the weight that you use for the set and the reps. It'll make such a difference. Or if you can remember it, I simply just remember it. So track your progression. At least track your compound movements. Track some things, right? You don't have to track everything. The more you could track, the better. But track as much as you can without it being too, And then the last one is to manipulate your psychology. Okay? What does that mean? You think I'm going to tell you to like cast a spell on yourself before you train? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, this is a big one for me, use music. If you have to and you're okay with the potential consequences, use caffeine, right? Get into the right mindset. Again, we go back to aggression, all right? Be intense through aggression, be intense through music, be intense through caffeine. This all falls under psychological, okay? Most people don't need the psychological. Most people just need to fucking understand that their lifting needs to be more high burst energy, more bursts rather than more continuous. Again, you should not be able to breathe normally during your set. It should be like a swim, almost like how swimmers sound, except you're not going underwater. You're tensing every single muscle in your body to stabilize yourself, okay? Most people can get away with tracking progression, and most people already listen to music when they work out. But dude, again, do these things, and I promise you will be able to achieve intensity, which is so underrated. Because a lot of people don't know how to be intense. Or it's as simple as this. Some of us are naturally intense, and those people are the ones that they did not need to watch this video because they know what it means to be intense. They know, they're honest with themselves. But a lot of people, they come to the gym and their effort is weak. They don't put in the effort to increase the volume, they don't go for the extra 2 reps. They don't increase the weight. They get comfortable. And that's okay if you don't care about improvement. But if you care about improvement, do these things, okay? Track your progression. Listen to some music, sip some caffeine, okay? Move more in short bursts. I hope this video was helpful. It was kind of all over the place. Again, dude, it was a hassle to make. I appreciate you all who made it to the end of this video. If you did, please leave a like. Comment down below what you thought about it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.